Welcome back to another edition of the Water Matters podcast. Episode 4, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. I'm joined today by Callum Vallance-Poole. Callum heads up our marketing at Graph UK Limited, and I have asked Callum to join me for this episode to discuss a topic that I don't think that many people will be familiar with, but it's an important topic. It's an important topic within our business for sure. And within the sustainable water management industry as a whole. And so, important subject today. Callum knows a lot about it. So very pleased that he's agreed to join me to discuss this important topic. So we have also recently just supported Graph UK in their Christmas charity pub quiz. So we may have gained, I hope, a few listeners that received a free gift from the Water Matters podcaster newsletter, which actually at the time of recording, so that happened last night, and the Water Matters team were kind enough to donate a free prize to every quiz team. So we hid these little envelopes underneath one chair at every table, and so each member, or one member of every team, received a free drink on us last night, and of course a little compelling invitation to subscribe and listen to the Water Matters podcast. So if you have joined us, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed the quiz and your free drink, of course. So we might have some new listeners. So let's just introduce again. Let's remind people what Water Matters is all about for anyone listening for the first time. It is to discuss all things water matters, particularly focused on the construction industry. We are all about sustainable water management in our day job, but we are also looking to use this platform as a scope to discuss things outside of, what we do with rainwater harvesting and sewage treatment plants and stormwater management and all that sort of stuff. We want to cover the whole gambit of water matters, especially sustainability and, things we can all improve, behavioral changes, things that lead to a greener planet, because water matters. So that's what it's all about. Today, though, let's get into the topic. The topic today, in case, the topic today is nutrient neutrality. So Callum has become himself a bit of a knowledge hub, to use our sort of website language, on this subject, because he has put content together for us within our business on this topic multiple times over the last year, 18 months. And so I feel is very well informed and therefore is in a good position to be able to talk to us about exactly what nutrient neutrality is and why you should care and why you should know about what it is. So first of all, let's start off with a little overview introduction. CVP, what is water neutrality?
Nutrient neutrality is...
Sorry, nutrient neutrality. Did I say water neutrality the whole time?
No, you said nutrient neutrality.
Okay, forgive me, everyone. I should have... Yeah, there are two things within our business that actually we've just talked about our 2025 business plans today, and both the subjects of water neutrality and nutrient neutrality have been talked about. Forget about water neutrality for this episode. That is not what this is about. That is a thing, and I'm sure it's a topic we'll cover another date in the future. But this episode is all about nutrient neutrality, which CVP is about to tell you what it is.
So the thing is, they're both two riveting subjects that we just love. So it's more necessity that I've had to learn so much about it in order to help us produce the content we need for our customers and our readers. But nutrient neutrality is, in essence, developments making sure that they're not adding excess nutrients into waterways. So this is nitrogen, phosphorus, basically nutrients that come off natural waste and going into water bodies. Because when they do, the two biggest culprits are agriculture, because of the fertilizers they use. They have a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen in them in order to help crops to grow. And when they run off fields into rivers, they can basically pollute the water bodies. And another culprit is wastewater from UK homes. So as you can imagine, the best way to describe it is using the crop scenario, because you've got nitrogen in the fertilizer to help the crops grow quicker, more efficient, more effectively. obviously to help supply the UK demand for food. Once those nitrogen and phosphorus goes into the water bodies, you've got water-based plants in there. So basically algae is a massive one of them, but there's a lot of other water-based plants. And once the nitrogen gets into there, it accelerates the growth of those natural plants. So when they grow, obviously they need, like any living organism, they need oxygen. So when they grow, they take out so much oxygen in the water, it damages the ecosystem and the environment of those water bodies. So we're seeing in the UK that the diversity of or the biodiversity of our waterways are absolutely shot to pieces because of the amount of nitrates and phosphates that have made their way into our waterways. So nutrient neutrality is how can we make more developments basically nitrogen or phosphate neutral. So they're not adding any more kind of nitrogen or phosphorus into the waterways at the same time as we're trying to reduce them and make our waterways more biodiverse.
So as an average person who knows nothing about wastewater treatment systems or farming or agriculture, they might see, if I understand you correctly, they're walking through a field or somewhere in nature, they get to a river, and the river is just overgrown with algal blooms, I believe they're referred to as. So like they look in the water and all they see is just greenery, and to such an extent that it's really overwhelming. It's overtaking the amount of space that's in there for all of the animal life that lives in that river, and really it's stealing their oxygen, to put it in simple terms. Yes. So all of that algae and other plant life that has grown so quickly and so sort of it's just taken over everything, is therefore killing off the other species and animal life, sort of fish and all that sort of stuff in the rivers because of the excess nutrients in the water. Yes. Okay. So, and that is being made worse by more houses being built and the effluent from the sewage treatment works then being discharged into watercourses, local, rivers and waterways in the area close to where the new houses are being built, and it's making the situation worse. Correct?
Yeah, because we see in the news all the time of water companies polluting sewage into rivers and other watercourses. There's been so many fines recently because they're starting to crack down on them, and the government are enforcing a lot of fines and a lot of practices in order to reduce that. But the UK homes isn't so much the issue. It's the fact that we haven't built sustainably and we haven't thought about the long term. We've been very much shortism and building so many homes to fit the kind of need for homes in the UK. There's still housing shortage, but we're trying to consistently build homes at a quick basis in order to make sure there's enough homes to go around. But the issue is it's the stormwater that's going into the sewage works because it's so outdated. Our sewers have been installed since like the 1900s. They've never been updated. They've never been expanded. So what's happening is when we're getting weather events like we have recently, there's a flush of stormwater going into the sewers. And because they all have a license to discharge into the rivers in case there is excess water going in, because basically the water companies, they have their licenses in place to reduce the chance of flooding. So they'll put that water, if they can, into the rivers in order to reduce the likelihood of flooding in local areas with the sewers overflowing with stormwater and household sewage. So over time, once those licenses and once those kind of really peak periods of stormwater coming in, they dilute the sewage with stormwater, but takes it to the rivers and waterways. But obviously it is just raw sewage that's being taken into our rivers and oceans, and they are still full of nitrates and phosphates because they haven't been taken to a sewage treatment works to actually be treated.
Yeah, which of course is, as you say, it's a topic that's in the news regularly. One of the articles on our watermatters.life website, which was added on the 5th of November, was all about the rally in London where over 15,000 people marched through London to really highlight and get attention on on the sewage spills that are still taking place and perhaps seemingly increasing. So I would encourage people, if you're interested in learning more, go and read that article on the watermatters.life website, because a lot of people were compelled into action there, because it is such a, it's just such a bad thing that's happening that of course the majority of people want to change. Now, one solution to it presumably would be just build no more houses. Then it sort of is not going to make the situation worse, is it? But of course, that can't happen. And actually, with the recent changes of government and that sort of stuff, we're actually looking to build more houses.
Yep.
Because the UK needs it. And so the whole thing about the key word in sustainable water management is that it's sustainable. So we have to find a way to make sure that the water can be managed in a way that is sustainable, so we can still build the number of properties that are required, but make sure that that we're not adding to existing problems. And so this is why a lot of developments have been put on hold, haven't they, throughout this kind of neutrality sort of buzzword or whatever that does get thrown around quite a lot in our business, but probably isn't that familiar to just average normal people. It's delayed a lot of things from a housing perspective, has it not?
Yes, because there's certain areas of the country where you can't even build homes because they weren't even approved planning. So Norfolk, definitely the case. I think since 2022, no homes were being approved or being built within the county, and that's such a massive county. It covers such a vast area. And like we said, there is a housing shortage in the UK. New houses do need to be built in order to house the population, and in one county alone, it's not the case. I think there's now 27 regions that have been affected by nutrient neutrality, all the way up from Middlesbrough all the way down to Portsmouth. So many areas of the country, typically coastal, where the large rivers feed into oceans. That's where we're seeing hotspots. Herefordshire is a massive one as well. The River Wye is one of the worst ones for biodiversity. If you go online and look at pictures from what it was like 10 years ago to what it is now, you can actually see the amount of plant life in the actual river. It's so visible. There's so much to it. It's excessively grown, and they've taken all the oxygen out of the water. And I have family who's moving, my family members are moving out to London and moving to Herefordshire. They're not even building their own home. They bought one. They are pretty much knocking down a wall, which reduces one bedroom, but they're then making an extension to build another. So basically it goes from still a 3-bed home, but even through the planning of turning a 3-bed home into a 3-bed home, they had to prove that they weren't going to add any more nitrogen and phosphate from the house. So even though the number of bedrooms hadn't changed and the number of occupants hadn't changed, they still had to go through that process, which took like 6 months for planning.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to cover this topic, because it is something that I just don't think that many people will know about it. But actually, those people in your family, as a good example, they've had to learn about it. They've had to find out about it. It could have prevented them doing what they wanted to do, how they wanted to live their life, the changes that they wanted to make to their property. And I think we're going to see it more and more and more. And so I do think it's something that people should be familiar with. Perhaps, it's not in the news as much as sewage going into the ocean or the sea and all that sort of stuff, or Thames Water and their money problems and all the other headlines that we see. But it's a real thing, and it's preventing a lot of houses being built, could even prevent extensions and renovations and that sort of stuff. So it's something that, hopefully people are interested to learn more about, especially because it could affect more and more people as we move forward. So let's talk about an example of why we know about it, why we're involved, and how we're helping to a certain extent. We don't, have the one and only solution for this. Let's be honest, but we are involved with some projects because there are ways now, and particularly through the phosphate credit scheme that we should explain. There are ways that you can mitigate the amounts of nutrients and phosphates and all that sort of stuff, and offset from one place to another, and it's it can get quite complicated, but let's try and make it as simple as possible. What does that look like? How does it work? And how are developers in particular getting around this issue of not being able to build the houses that we need to be built?
Well, you touched on it a second ago with credit schemes. So these have been used in very similar applications in different industries already. Carbon is a massive one because carbon, being carbon neutral, is a goal for many companies and governments pretty much across the world. So they've taken that blueprint and tried to apply it for nutrient neutrality. Because the issue with nitrates and phosphates, you're not going to get it to zero. Like with free sewage treatment plants, you're not going to get it. You can get it to a very low amount, but you're not going to get it to completely zero. So the thesis of what the upgrade scheme is, they found that wastewater from homes is a massive proportion. But with some homes, around 3 to 5% aren't connected to main sewer networks. They're connected to cesspools, septic tanks, and sewage treatment plants. And what their schemes are running now are septic tank upgrades. So they take the amount of phosphates and nitrates that would have been taken from septic tanks and discharged into the ground. Obviously, because there's very little treatment within a septic tank, there's still high levels. They install a sewage treatment plant, typically for free, to replace the septic tank. And the performance level of the sewage treatment plant gets the nitrates and phosphates down to such a low level that it doesn't cause as much of an impact to the environment. Then the company that usually installs these systems will then buy the credits off the homeowner and then resell them to the big property developer that's looking to build homes. So in a way, they're doing all the work to significantly reduce the amount of phosphates and nitrates in the local area, then selling those credits back to the housing developers to then do something similar. So it's very similar to how carbon credits worked, in that there were schemes out there that reduced the amount of carbon companies were emitting, and they would sell that to like concrete manufacturers that required a lot of carbon to manufacture concrete, so they could still manufacture to a certain extent, but they were able to do it at a much reduced rate as an overall.
So you've got a lot of old housing stock which currently discharge their wastewater to a septic tank, for example. Septic tanks, for those unfamiliar, is just a very simple, basic concrete or plastic or steel tank buried underground, usually in your garden. So all of your wastewater would be sent to that septic tank. And in a septic tank, typically in the UK, there are two chambers.
Yep.
There's a chamber it goes into first, and literally just imagine you flush your toilet and all the water from that goes straight into that chamber number one. Mm-hmm. And the solids element of that wastewater, sludge as I believe it's affectionately known, would settle to the bottom, and then the kind of water rises a little bit, and then there is normally a separating wall or a baffle that the cleaner water at the top would then trickle over into the second chamber. And of course, bacteria lives in this and is kind of breaking down the waste, and so you get cleaner water in that second chamber, which then builds up and then discharges through a pipework system into the ground around it, or most times does then find its way into the watercourse and to the nearest river or stream or sea or whatever. Problem is, there is very little treatment of the wastewater going on in that scenario. So septic tanks since 2020 have not been allowed in what's the scheme called? Forgive me.
General Bundle. Well, that was so that no septic tanks could be installed that lead to a watercourse.
Yes. Okay. So septic tanks, are still allowed, but they have to go through a drainage field so that the discharge from it cannot go straight into a river, because it's just not a good enough quality of water that is safe enough to go straight into a river. So any sort of septic tank that does discharge straight into a river is just not allowed. It has not been allowed since 2020. So you've got all these kind of older houses that quite typically, especially in rural areas, you mentioned Norfolk, they will have septic tanks. Yeah. And so the operation, this credit scheme, is a way of replacing those septic tanks to clean up that scenario so that you can sort of improve the scenario there, so that then you can build new houses nearby or in the same county, and almost make it worse, but the
it's the net positive
exactly
in a sense, because
it's a neutral environment.
Yes, because even though they are technically because they've reduced the amount of phosphates and nitrates, they're then adding more into that local area, so it balances it out.
Yeah, exactly.
But I imagine they'll have systems in place for those homes to make sure that their phosphate and nitrates runoff isn't as sort of once was.
Exactly. So what it does mean for some people, and we're working with some contractors that are doing this, some people will have been on the receiving end of an offer to have their septic tank upgraded to a fully biological sewage treatment plant at no cost to themselves, right? Which, of course, to some people sounds a bit too good to be true.
Yeah.
We, sadly, we've all become a little bit more cynical and skeptical. I feel like over the last sort of few years, as more scams happen, more bad things happen. It's just a natural thing for people to be a little more sort of skeptical of things that do seem too good to be true.
Yeah, because we were talking about this the other day, because we're trying to support one of our contractors with videos, and because of the company we're in, for us it seems like a no-brainer. You would do it because it's free, but then trying to put it into context of the house I have at the moment, if someone was to approach you to say, I will fit you a new boiler that would significantly reduce the amount of energy your home gives off, and the CO2 your boiler may produce, or the carbon monoxide that it releases, for free in the next week, I think I'd turn around and be like, I don't know if I'd let you. Because then, well, what if it doesn't work? What if they just take my boiler and run? What if they don't fit it right? What if what they say isn't true? I guess there's a lot of elements to it that make people skeptical to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a real sort of this is where the education and the explanations have to come in. People have to understand why. People have to see the bigger picture. It's another one of the reasons I wanted to cover the topic, because it is very likely that if you live in a small little village in Norfolk at the moment, and your property discharges to a septic tank in your garden, and that goes into the local river, you will, at some point over the next 3, 4, 5, however many years, you could be on the receiving end of an offer to replace your septic tank with a sewage treatment plant at no cost to you. The only thing you have to agree to is to keep your new treatment plant maintained. Yeah. It has to be maintained. It has to be serviced. It has to be kept working, because, of course, this whole system doesn't work if all these sort of older properties have their septic tanks changed to sewage treatment plants, which then don't get serviced, don't get maintained, basically stop working in the way that they should, and they just become septic tanks almost. Yeah.
Because this is, like you're saying, this is the issue, because people see that as, it's just an extra cost. If I have to then pay for it to be serviced and maintained, that's an extra cost to me, and obviously we live in a cost of living crisis, so the cost of things are on people's mind. But a lot of the people say, well, I've never had my septic tank emptied. I've never had it maintained. It just works completely natural. I don't need it. The chances are, if you haven't had your septic tank maintained or emptied in the last year or two, it's failing anyway, so you're causing more pollution.
Yeah, absolutely. But no one would know. No. Because no one gets told anything. So hopefully they listen to this, and, let's see.
I will.
But that's why, so if because really it needs people to be willing to have their existing septic tank changed out and replaced with a proper sewage treatment plant to enable this whole system to work, and to, first of all, prevent that sewage going into a river, and then to free up the possibility for more new houses to be built. And then, of course, we might get to the question of, maybe they don't want new houses to be built in their area. I'm sure everyone can think of someone, maybe even themselves, that's like, every single road out of our town has got new houses being built on it. Like, if I then have my septic tank upgraded to a treatment plant, I'm enabling them to build more houses. I think, it's a valid point. It's a position that I think a lot of people find themselves in. But the reality is we need to build more homes. And actually, if you've got children, you've got grandchildren, people need somewhere to live. And so you've kind of got to get past that one and recognize that they're going to build their homes anyway. actually, if your property's got a septic tank that is making the situation worse in terms of nutrients and phosphates going into rivers and watercourses, then actually it's just better that your system gets upgraded and replaced, because that is what needs to happen. And so this is happening more and more. And I believe that because we were wondering, is this going to change with the changeover of government and all that sort of stuff? And because let's all be honest, you never know what might stay the same or what might change. And we knew they wanted to build more houses, and we knew that this is a blocker on new houses being built. So it would be an easy thing for them to come in and say, do you know what? We don't care about the rivers anymore. Build as many houses as you want. Nutrient neutrality is a thing of the old government. But you've been doing some reading recently, and that's not quite the case, right?
Correct. Yeah, so, I mean, it's with anything. When a new government comes in, they tend to tear up the previous schemes that come in just to implement their own. I was thinking they would stick to them, because I would believe the Labour government is more acute to the sustainability aspect of the legislation and some of their kind of schemes. And yeah, it just seems to be the case. They are doubling down on it. They've committed to not changing it until the next election, so which will be another 4 years. So by that time, in what would it be now? 2028 next election. Here I am of age. But by 2028, there'll be even more development. And like you said, there'll probably be an aspect of nutrient neutrality built into planning and building codes. So as part of the planning, where there'll be sustainability codes, where what will you do as part of this housing development to ensure that it meets XYZ sustainability? There might be a case where how would you ensure that your housing development meets XYZ of nutrient neutrality? So I reckon within those 4 years, there's going to be more developments, there's going to be more education, so it becomes a bit more set in stone. The next aspect to it is there's more funding being allocated for schemes. So I think the government is allocating £47 million to basically nutrient neutrality schemes. So this is building wetlands, improving soil structure, because why septic tanks are so, going back to septic tanks, why they're still allowed to go into the ground is because of the natural bacteria will remove phosphates and nitrates naturally. If you put it into ground, then the soil, the plants within that ground area will take the nitrates and phosphates out naturally. It's just a natural way of doing it. So they're committing to wetlands and other natural schemes like soil structure, as I mentioned, in order to help it. And then the first big scale of nitrate credit scheme has been achieved by Persimmon Homes. They've now got permission to build 353 homes out in Herefordshire. And as I mentioned, Herefordshire is a massive area that's been affected because of the River Wye. But because of the credit schemes out there, they're able to now build 353 homes out there. So more stuff is getting planned, or more stuff is going through planning approval, because there's better education about it. People are starting to have better understanding about it, and the government is allocated more funds and resources in order to help tackle the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I suppose, for kind of full disclosure, one of the reasons that we know what we know about this is in our day jobs, Graph UK, we sell sewage treatment plants that do a particularly good job at reducing phosphate and nitrate levels for the treated effluent after for individual properties and commercial systems. So, of course, it's a challenge and a problem that we can help provide a solution to. It doesn't eradicate it altogether, but it certainly is a system that enables the problem to be reduced, and therefore, it's something that we are involved quite a bit in, and looking to help more with, because actually there are just so many properties with septic tanks that, to your point, if they're discharging into drainage fields and areas where they won't, the discharge won't make it to the watercourse or a nearby river or whatever, then fine, it's a nature-based solution and it helps and it works. But actually, if it is finding its way into the river or stream or whatever nearby, then it's causing a problem. It's causing a problem that 15,000 people are marching about. It's causing a problem for anyone that wants to swim in their local river or, sort of whatever water bodies are around them. And it's not a good thing. It changes the way that people want to live. And therefore, it's something that we're pleased to be able to do something about, and that should, if things keep moving in this direction, start making an improvement to the river network around the UK.
Certainly so. And I think a lot of it, you kind of touched on it earlier, that it's not just wastewater, it's water management as a whole. Because as I mentioned, stormwater going into sewer networks because of the changing weather patterns now means that realistically our sewers need to be upgraded. So how we manage our sewers and overflow stormwater, we're building more. So every kind of project now that's built has some form of SUDS or stormwater management system, which we also specialize in, so that any surface water runoff is dealt with. But there's so much existing building that isn't the case for. Mm-hmm. So how can we upgrade or retrofit systems there in order to deal with the stormwater management there? Is water runoff from agriculture. So how can we incentivize farmers to use more natural forms of fertilizer, so from kind of cow muck and whatever, and stop using chemical fertilizers? I know the price for chemical fertilizer has gone through the roof, like with everything. So there's now a chance to subsidize maybe farm animals in order to improve the use of natural fertilizer. Mm-hmm. So I think, as you said, it's not so much wastewater, it's water management as a whole. I know farming and agriculture is different, but it's, I think, 30 to 40% of the issue with nutrient neutrality. So they do need some help in order to fix it. And the issue has been levied on the housing developers because they've probably got more capital resources to deal with it than agriculture. But it is management of water as a whole. It's not just wastewater.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And if anyone is hearing about this for the first time and they are keen to know a little bit more, perhaps they're now thinking, oh, maybe that's why someone I knew or my family member had an issue with planning, or perhaps, some things are just they're thinking about a few things now and starting to join the dots. Where would they go if they wanted to find more information? We don't actually have a lot of information about nutrient neutrality as a topic on the Water Matters .life website platform yet. But where would you suggest they can find more?
Well, I would suggest a great website is graphuk.co.uk. There's lots of nutrient neutrality topics on there. Obviously, I say that in jest, but it's a very important topic for our customers, so we've written a lot of content about it. So that's one place to go. The other good place is the government side. Mm-hmm. It's a problem they're having to tackle, and they're making strides for it all the time. So they are consistently making changes, and so the government website is the best place for any new developments. But rest assured, those developments should also be covered on the Graph UK website as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that it is a topic that I hope for us to provide more information on within Water Matters. Ideally, we'll get to speak to some of the people that are actually involved in some of these septic tank upgrade schemes, because I'd love to be able to get someone on the podcast who is either a property owner that has been in the situation where they have had the knock on the door or the letter through the letterbox saying, we are looking to upgrade your septic tank for free to improve this situation, and someone that's done that and could talk us through it and why did they choose to do it, how did they get over that trust issue. I'd love to be able to bring that story to our listeners to give that kind of real side of it, and also some of the companies that are doing that, who are offering it as a service. Why are they doing it? Why did they start it? How's it going? How are they finding it? I think, as we've said, it's a topic that's going to be very, very evident and alive for the next 4 years at least. And therefore, let's talk about it. Let's, if I go back to one of our sort of calls to action in the very first episode of the Water Matters podcast, Tim Smedley, our author of The Last Drop, that our regular guest on the podcast, his main call to action and plea to people listening was to just talk more about water, to bring the conversation to the surface. And if that's going to be the case, let's actually, include some people. So I hope to be able to get some guests that are doing this, are really even more involved in this as a topic than we are. And we can hear their perspective because it's not something that's going away. And I think it, hopefully most people do care about the rivers and, and the life within it. And so, why shouldn't we want to do something to improve that situation? So, fingers crossed we can aim for that. We can get some more conversation about nutrient neutrality in the future. Anything final that you don't think you have said that you might want to end on? Anything at all? I think we have, you've covered very well what it is, why people should know about it, or, why people should care, what impact it might have on people in the UK. And so from my perspective, you have delivered on my request. But anything else that you think would be useful to add?
No, I think it's just doubling down on your point. I think it all comes down from education. Taking the time to read about it, learn about it, gives people a better understanding of it. I think certainly the more you understand how the waterways work in the UK, gives you a better overall picture, understanding of the current issue. So it's a fascinating subject, and I think it requires a lot of funding and work in order to improve the infrastructure around, but it's certainly that could have a long-term benefit to the country and allowed us to build sustainably. And I can't wait to talk about water neutrality.
Yeah, absolutely. When I'll probably describe it as nutrient neutrality. And it's a topic that it's all connected. So everyone drives past these new housing sites and probably thinks very little about the situation with water management, or where are these new 30, 50, 100, 350 houses going to discharge their waste to? And, where's all the, to the point about water neutrality, where's all the water coming from that is going to be supplied to these new homes? It's all connected, and it all matters. But it's, people think about it in relation to power. They think about it in relation to solar or heating or air source heat pumps or whatever. Very, very seldom that people think about it in relation to water.
I think because it's such a cheap commodity compared to those. When it comes to heat, electricity, gas, power, oil, it's so cheap compared to those that the biggest mover is always financial, that people can use as a lever to pull, and that's what makes the decision. So I think it comes purely down from education. Yeah,
and I don't think many people, myself included, a little while ago, would even have the thought, okay, there's 100 houses being built here. I know there's a river that's going along behind it. What state is that river already in? Are these 100 houses going to make that worse? That you wouldn't, I don't think, you'd never connect those dots. Not without becoming aware of this as a topic, realizing that actually they probably had to fight through some planning regulations and stipulations to even be allowed to build those new houses there, and without, making sure that they don't have a negative impact on that river.
No, it's very true. I moved into a new build flat 3 years ago, and already I can see a field. In my kitchen window, I used to look out and there's a nice field. Now it's been chewed up by bulldozers because they're building homes, and I haven't thought about the wastewater, I haven't thought about the water. All I've done is curse these people for ruining the view from my kitchen window.
Yeah, and you work in the industry, so more than most about, if anyone were to have the thought about, I wonder where, how are they dealing with the surface water or the wastewater or that sort of stuff, you, more so than someone outside of this industry, are more likely to think about it, and you haven't, because it's not natural to think about it.
And I think about it more than a commercial level, because then I wonder who's installing the attenuation system for that project. If they haven't thought about us during that decision, then something's going wrong, because that's my area of work anyway. So I think about it from that.
Well, I hope, if you can see them, then that means they can see you. So as long as you put a big, marketing board in your window or something, so that...
the flag above my house.
Obviously. Anyway, so let's finish there. I may have mentioned, I think I mentioned right at the beginning that this, I believe, is episode 4 of the Water Matters podcast. That means there have been 3 prior episodes. So if this is your first time listening, I would like to particularly draw your attention to episode 1, which was where it all began. Please do listen to that. That's Tim and I talking about water scarcity, which at the moment might feel a bit of an odd subject because it's raining all the time.
We can literally hear the rain
we can hear the rain on the roof right now. But second one, so episode 2 is also good. Well, there was a 1.5 actually, and then an episode 2. But the next one that is a must listen is episode 3. And again, I was joined by Tim Smedley, and we talked about a very, very relevant topic at the moment, which is flooding. It was the opposite. It was the fact that storms are getting seemingly more severe when it rains. It seems to be raining more than ever. Again, on the watermatters.life website, there are some articles on there about the recent storms, Storm Bert being the most recent one that's been written about on the Water Matters platform. And, why is it getting worse? There's been so much flooding around. It's horrifying in a lot of cases. So listen to episode number 3. You will learn some stuff from that. We're preparing for episode number 5, which the topic is still to be confirmed. So I'm not going to tease that one out just yet. But if you haven't listened, episode 1 in particular, episode 3, thank you for listening to episode 4. Thank you very much, CVP, for joining me. And hope this has been interesting. Thank you once again. If it is something you're enjoying listening to, please do hit the like button, depending on what you're watching it on. Hit subscribe, share with your friends, tell people about it. We also do a fortnightly email newsletter, so you can go to watermatters.life. You literally only have to put your email address in there, and you will be on the receiving end of those fortnightly emails to keep you informed about a lot of things happening in the world of sustainable water management. So thanks for listening, and we will be back with you soon with a further episode. Thanks. See you soon.